Hello and welcome to another video and podcast from Fantasy Football Scout. My name is Joe and today I'm joined by Mark, aka the FPL General, who will be revealing his Game Week 6 wildcard team. Welcome Mark, how are you?
I'm very well, Joe. I've been, like yourself, looking forward to wildcard activation for quite a
Yeah.
while now. Hasn't been a fantastic start to the season. Triple captain went well, but apart from that, I think I'm ranked about 1.2 million. So
Yeah.
team needs an overhaul
Yeah.
and looking forward to getting stuck into it today.
Yeah, you're the same. I'm 1.1 million, so there's not much in it really. Just a few handful of points, not even that, a couple of points probably. And very similar. I haven't had a bad game week yet, but I haven't had that, say, for example, that triple captaincy game week. So my lack of a bad game week, sort of, they've either been average, just above average, or quite good. But that's what it gets. It gets you sort of a million or so rank. With you, it's like you got that one big triple captaincy haul, but also you sort of as you, like me, we're sort of papering over the cracks,
Perhaps, yeah.
yeah, more ways than one with our team, papering over the cracks in our team. With the occasion, I don't know. You have Dean Henderson this week. We'll put your team up in a sec, but
Yeah, I've
that's
seen Henderson and I looked into Munoz
yeah,
off the bench for
yeah.
Jota as well. So
So,
yeah, feel pretty dirty.
so it's that kind of thing. But I know I can't rely on a Dean Henderson 9-pointer every week. I just can't do that, especially against a team like Manchester United. But okay, what we're going to do is we're going to have a look back at Game Week 5, a little taster there. And then we'll look at that wildcard team. We'll look at some of the 50-50 picks as well. We're going to focus on some of those. So there's some players that Mark's considering. There's some other players that he might get as well. We'll look at that. We'll obviously look at the fixtures as well to see if we can target the best players from the best teams. Okay. Before we do that, just do a reminder: do check out the Fantasy Football Scout members area. All the stats we're gonna talk about here are from there. Also, I've used the comparison tool specifically for this video as well. So comparing two players, and we've got their little heat map, and you can play around with that in the members area there. Do press that like button, does help us out, and do remember to subscribe. Keep up to date with our latest videos and podcasts. Okay, let's have a look at Game Week 5. So I've got your team up here. I've recycled the picture I used last week of Jota, of where's Jota's points, to now he's elevated to where's Jota. 64 points, 6 points above average. I think that's pretty good. But as you said, it still means a red arrow. But yeah, do you want to take us through your team? Especially if anyone's might be staying on your wild card.
Yeah, I think it ended up being a small red arrow, maybe 2 or 3 thousand places. I thought it was actually a small green arrow when I checked, but obviously hard to get used to these late bonus point changes. So that obviously that shook things up. Mr. Rogers in particular probably hurt me there as a non-owner, getting 3 bonus right at the death. So yeah, I had low expectations the week before the wild cards, and it was pleasantly surprising. But I got lucky, got the double Crystal Palace clean sheet. Munoz off the bench for Jota. So it was one of those where I was absolutely sweating watching the Liverpool on the live score app just to see if Jota was going to come on or not. I was hoping he wouldn't, and thankfully Slot did me a favour. Robertson came in with a clean sheet, but of course outscored by Trent. Porro blanked again, big question marks on him, whether he stays or whether he goes. Konsa, nice surprise as well, getting a goal and a 9-pointer. Elsewhere, Captain Salah, disappointing, just the assist, but at least there wasn't a blank. Eze blanked again. Minty, 2-week punt did not work at all. It was Minty or Rogers, you'll remember, and guess which player I went for.
Yeah,
Joe
same here.
Pedro. Yeah, Joe Pedro. The one free transfer I made was Isak to Solanke. And as soon as I seen the team sheets on Saturday, I switched off for a few hours because once I seen Isak starting, I was very, very concerned given how the previous week's 3 transfers went. But thankfully, Solanke did the business and Isak did not. And Haaland got his usual goal and maybe a little bit surprisingly 3 bonus
Yeah.
points as well. So Jota auto subbed out, Harwood Bellis on the bench as well with Sangari. So yeah, very happy to completely overhaul this squad.
Yeah, I've got slightly different players, but a similar thought here. I mean, I've got Minter and João Pedro, Brighton's fixtures turn, and I even wish they hadn't, because following fixtures for Brighton's been a nightmare. So you get João Pedro in for 2 great home games, only plays a few minutes, and he's clearly come back from injury. Minter gets subbed out, and then you've got a lot of Crystal Palace, but I can't rely on Crystal Palace every week. And I didn't get jammy points. I just got 2 points off. Robinson from Fulham came in for Jota for me. Muniz is 4 points. He's still in my team, or rather not anymore. But his 4 points stayed on my bench. But yeah, so I didn't get similar jam. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those weeks where it says to me, and obviously to you, it's wildcard. So
Yeah, it feels like a right time. You did ask as well there about players that might survive here. So I really don't think there'll be too many. Crystal Palace, both defensive assets are going to go. Robertson's probably going to go as well. Poro's kind of one of the 50-50s, which we can talk about. Konsa might stay, but more likely to go, probably for someone with better fixtures and more clean sheet potential. Salah's probably going to go as well, I think. Eze question marks. Both Brighton guys will go. Solanke might survive. Haaland will very likely survive. And then bench guys are all gone as well.
yeah,
Jota, Harwood Bellis,
that's
and Sangari. So quite a big overhaul.
that's huge. I mean, I've had wildcards before where I've changed maybe say 5 players, but like you, I'm changing pretty much the whole lot, which is quite rare, especially because it's not. I mean, for both of us, it's not a horrendous start at all. I mean, being around the million mark at this stage is not bad, but yeah, we could do better.
Yeah, I would have taken. Give me roughly 1 million after 5 weeks, then
Yeah.
wildcard, fine. I know I'm inflated slightly because of I'm triple captainshipless, but at least it went well, and I can't waste it this season. But I always have a loose goal, top 100K by Christmas or turn of the year,
Yeah.
and then try and kick on afterwards. So we're absolutely fine at 1 million.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, let's have a look at the fixtures just before we look at your wild card. So I've just got the next 7 fixtures, taking it up to game week 12. And I've sorted this by fixture difficulty in the Fantasy Football Scout members area. Then they show that Everton are top. And Brentford are second. Then you've got Ipswich. Manchester United, their fixtures particularly get good from game week 8 through to 12. But they do have Tottenham and Aston Villa first. Man City's got Newcastle away, but basically that's still a good fixture. And then they've got this fantastic run starting with Fulham at home. West Ham's fixtures improve. Leicester's get better as well after Arsenal in game week 6. They've got Bournemouth at home game week 7 right the way through. They've got Ipswich, Nottingham Forest, Southampton in the mix there. Liverpool's are sort of middling. They're okay. But Liverpool, I think, are quite key to our plans. Meanwhile, Newcastle, terrible fixtures. Brighton, terrible fixtures. Southampton, Chelsea, 2 good fixtures, and then they go terrible. Bournemouth, 2 good fixtures, then they go terrible. And Tottenham are quite good fixtures right up until sort of game week 12 when they've got Man City away. And Nottingham Forest, they've got mixed fixtures, but I think they've got some good ones in there. Some Fulham at home, Crystal Palace at home. Anyway, that's the mix there. And I was mainly reading those out for the benefit of those listening to the podcast version. But what does this sort of patchwork quilt of fixtures for the next 6 or 7 game weeks tell you about your general thoughts of a wildcard?
Yeah, it's, the Scout season ticker is always my starting point, has been for many, many years when it comes to a wild card. Even before I was affiliated with Scout, I'm a creature of habit. So I've been looking at, this kind of ticker for a long, long time. And you've put up there the next 7 game weeks. That's roughly what I would do on a wild card. What I like to do is maybe go to the Scout ticker, look at the next 4 weeks by difficulty, then look at the next 6 weeks, and then look at the next 8 weeks. Just get, 2 or 3 snapshots. And it kind of gives you an idea of what teams then you want to target. So 7 here is a good number to use, I think. And straight away, I'm looking at the top and I'm looking at the very bottom. So bottom, first of all, Brighton. That means Joe Pedro Mente go. Easy decision. I sold Isak last week. He's not going to come back in. Chelsea near the bottom as well. So it's probably Cole Palmer, who I think is fixture proof, and no one else. And then back to the top, Everton up there. We've got very good cheap enablers. Dwight McNeil, Calvert-Lewin, maybe even a defender. We know Brentford was a big part of this, reason to wildcard this week. Unfortunately, we don't have Wissa anymore, but Mbumo will be one of the first names in, possibly a 4 million Van de Berg or maybe another Brentford defender. Ipswich have got Leif Davis. I've wanted him for a while. He's very likely to come in. They've got 4 million defenders as well. Elsewhere, they're kind of in the middle of the fixture ticker, but they are one of the best teams in the league, and that's Arsenal. I have had 0 Arsenal players for the last 2 game weeks, which did not go to plan. Gabriel back-to-back goals
Saka
after selling.
return, another week of a
Yeah.
return.
So thankfully, those 2 painful game weeks are over in terms of Arsenal, and it's just probably a question of is it double Arsenal or triple Arsenal coming in?
Yeah, Arsenal. Okay, I mean, I've got Gabriel still, because I don't know whether what shall I call it. I should call it the John Terry memorandum, whereby it doesn't matter about the fixture if you've got one of those centre backs that can nick a goal at set piece. It doesn't matter about the fixture. Koscielny, I remember in the past, John Terry, Vidic, when I first started playing Manchester United. These are the players, you just play them whatever. So when I see bad fixture for Arsenal, a lot of people say, oh, I can't believe you're going to play Gabriel then. Well, I've got back-to-back. His 2 tough fixtures, I've got back-to-back. And there's more chance of those types of goals because that's how they're going to get goals. And Arsenal are sensational at aiming at Gabriel's head. So Saka to Gabriel, 2 weeks in a row. Yeah, he's gone up in price. He's 6.1 now. So he stays. And I look at those fixtures here. Game week. The reason I bring that up is game week 6 and 7. Leicester and Southampton at home, great. Bournemouth away, great. Liverpool at home, Newcastle away, Chelsea away from game weeks 9 to 11. I look at that and I think Gabriel is a must for those 3 games. And I'm okay with him clean sheet wise for those first 3. But it's if I'm looking for a Gabriel goal, a home to Liverpool, that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's wasn't fun listening to you talk through that as a non-Gabriel owner. Selling Saka and Gabriel 2 weeks ago, again, that's going to hurt for a wee while. But before Gabriel jumped back up jumped to 6.1 million, I got him back in at 6 million, and he's going to be there for the rest of the season now. Absolutely, I've been burned too many times by him. He's just too good in the opposition penalty area. So I play every week for sure.
Okay, let's have a look at your wildcard. So what we're going to do, I'll just sort of explain what we'll do. I'll put the wildcard team up. You can read it out in full for the benefit of those listening on the podcast version, and then we'll go back to the goalkeepers and we'll just go through it: goalkeeper, defence, midfield, forwards, and particularly with one of your midfield decisions and 2 of your forward decisions. I've got some more screens I can put up then when we get to that point, looking at those sort of looking at the comparison tool and comparing the sort of 50-50 decisions you're thinking about. So drum roll in everyone's head, please. And here is the wildcard team. So do you want to read that out?
Yeah, so just first off, 0.3 million in the bank with my current team value. In goal, no surprise, David Raya, and a 4 million backup, which is currently Everson, just for nostalgia from painful days gone by. Gabriel's back in, Leif Davis, Vandenberg from Brentford, Milenkovic from Forest, and Pedro Porro is still there for now. Got a bit of value tied up. Rodgers in midfield, I'll finally own him for the first time. Mbumo, Semenyo, Saka, Cole Palmer, so 2 10 million plus midfielders instead of Salah. Up front, a premium and 2 budget in Haaland, Calvert-Lewin, and Chris Wood.
Okay, so we'll go. Let's go with the goalkeepers first. Okay, so on my wildcard, I don't know if it was the same with you. I had 2 decisions: Raya and a 4.0, which you've gone for. I've gone for that as well, or Fleck and Verbruggen, because Brighton, Brentford's the fixtures are fantastic as a rotation. Brentford's fixtures are brilliant. Well, they're just brilliant up to game week 12, and that's as far as I've got to, so it could be good after that. But Brighton's are terrible up till game week 12, which is handy. So you can start playing Verbruggen really in game week 12. You could also play, you've got a choice in game week 9 of home to Wolves, or play Flecken at home to Ipswich. So you've got a choice there. So that's quite good. So what was that end up being an easy move for you, Raya and 4.0?
Yeah, I don't think this is one I'm going to overthink, just given how Raya and Arsenal have started the season. Also, the factor here is how Gabriel has started the season, because it's going to get to a point where almost everyone will have Gabriel and we won't benefit from whatever he does, whether it's attack returns or clean sheets. So I do like the idea of the double up in defence. Raya's getting bonus, he's getting plenty of saves, and I think as well elsewhere in the team, this will be triple Arsenal, Raya, Gabriel, Saka. Am I going to want other Arsenal assets in the future? Havertz, I think there's enough alternatives. Trossard, Martinelli, all these wingers, I'm not too keen. So I think I'm quite content to go double defense with Saka and be comfortable not being
Yeah.
able to get another attacker.
Yeah, what's also impressed me with Raya this season is that he's racking up the saves. So previously, the Arsenal goalkeeper was rubbish because they just got no saves because their defence is so good, no one could get past them. And but Raya's getting saves, he's making good saves. He's racking up bonus as well still, which goalkeepers they're sort of slightly hindered this season with the change in the bonus point system. So he's getting those matches, lots of routes to points. And yeah, I agree with you. It's that double up really, Gabriel. I mean, I don't know, was he 10% owned in my rankings at the moment, but he's not going to be. He's going to be on loads of wildcards. And so Gabriel and Raya, yeah, you're going to need to sort of play the ownership game and think, well, if Gabriel and Saliba or Raya owners, those with just one, and that just and they're so well owned there that you're going to need to double up. It's like effectively captaining an Arsenal defender every week. Yeah.
Yeah, and on current season numbers and last season, it just makes sense to get two Arsenal defensive assets. Best defense in the league. I don't usually pay premium for goalkeepers, but I just there's something nice about just taking away the decision of which 4.5 goalkeeper is best, or trying to jump around or trying to rotate, and just plug David Raya. And I think we do have enough enablers elsewhere in FPL now that we can pay a bit more for Raya and just possibly leave him there for the whole season. And even at 5.5 should return good value.
Yeah. Pedro Porro, you saying is in for now. I've actually taken him out, so I have that 0.1 value tied up in him, and I've just removed him because I've looked at the fixtures and I think yes, he's got the chance of a goal, but Alexander Arnold is the one I've gone for. I just think have more of a chance, and it's just a lack of clean sheets at Spurs. And that's the bread and butter. So I just think if I'm going to get Porro in, I might as well get Van de Ven or something like that. I might as well get another cheaper Spurs asset. But yeah, you've gone for him. But is he likely to stay? Do you think? I mean, 'cause nevertheless, he has goal threat.
I think he's probably going to go. I just like you. It's the clean sheets are not there, and you do need them as well. You can't just rely on attacking threat. So. I look at the price. He's 5.5. It's not a massive stretch to Gvardiol, for example, or the same price for another steady defender, a Diaz or an Akanji, which just feels better. I think long term, bit more boring, but maybe returns more points. And even Robertson's not a massive stretch. I've got 0.3 in the bank here. I'm only 0.2 away from Robbo, who's got me the clean sheet. Maybe I just keep him, or I just find a way to get Trent, because that's a big omission in this first draft that I would probably like to fix. I would like to have Trent in here somehow. But yeah, Porro, I just left him in just in case. I didn't want to pay an extra 0.1 on Friday for him. But he's probably going to go, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of pulled the plaster, but mainly because in my structure, I have gone for Alexander Arnold because, as you said, I'm looking at other teams. I'm thinking, what am I missing out on? Well, hey presto, then he steps up and gets an assist. So automatically, and I know he's going to get bonus from that. So automatically, I'm like 4 to 5 points down, even if I've got a Liverpool defensive cover somewhere with Robertson. Yeah. The other three places are interesting, and they're weirdly the most interesting for me in my team, because I've got Gabriel, Alexander Arnold, got 3 players, so I'm going to have to do rotation there. So you've gone for Leif Davis, Van den Berg. There's so many Vans at the moment in defences and wildcards. And Milenkovic at Nottingham Forest. So why have you gone for them? And have you given much thought to fixtures?
I need to this week spend some time on the whole rotation thing as well with defenders. I haven't done it yet, busy weekend and all that, but it's something I will look at, because I think there's a good chance I'll end up like yourself on Trent Gabriel. And then for budget reasons, it might need to be a bit of rotation for the third defensive spot. So Vandenberg was the first one I put in because it's 2 starts now, it's 4 million and it's good fixtures.
Yeah.
But again, I need to do a bit more of a deep dive into that. Is he going to be secure, or
Yeah.
different formations? Maybe he might not be. Leif Davis, I just think is one of the best 4-5 defenders in the game, and the fixtures are good. There's attacking potential, and hopefully a couple of clean sheets to come as well. So I think Davis will probably stay in, and I'll play him when the fixtures are good. So maybe I need to find someone who rotates well with Ipswich. I just plugged Milenkovic in for now because Forest have been pretty good defensively last season and this one. Milenkovic a bit of goal threat as well, and they're towards the top of the fixture ticker. I like him over Moreno. I think Moreno only got 45 minutes. Milenkovic just a bit more secure as a centre back. So this is probably the part of the team that will probably change around the most over the next couple of days
Yeah.
in terms of fixtures and stuff like that. So more work to do there.
Yeah, I have exactly the same thoughts there. So, some of the things that I've been thinking about, which may help, Spurs and Fulham rotate really well. I think immediately. So Fulham, you can play away to Nottingham Forest, game week 6. Whilst Tottenham have Manchester United, Tottenham also have Brighton away, which is marginally better than Man City away for Fulham. But then Fulham got Aston Villa. Well, that's fine because Tottenham got West Ham at home. And then both of them have Everton, Crystal Palace, so they're quite good. Fulham have Brentford at home, which is marginally better than Tottenham's Aston Villa at home. I think game week 12, for example, Fulham, Wolves at home. That's handy because Tottenham have Man City away that week. So Van de Ven and Robinson is quite a good one. Or you could go for Anderson if you need to save a bit of money. He's now nailed. So he's now nailed in the Fulham back line. He was one of my favourites at Crystal Palace because he'd get the odd goal. And already I've heard when I was listening to the commentary of those games, it's like, oh, so-and-so, saved from an Anderson header. That's what I want to hear. And he's exactly the kind of player that no one's going to have. It'd be quite handy on the bench. So that's quite good. We mentioned Brentford and Brighton as well. So Lewis Dunk and Pinnock, or Lewis Dunk and Vandenberg as well, is a really good double up. So a Brighton defender can go in there. You can park them on the bus. My final thought about that is that I did have Mascara in, but he's now quite. It looks like a bad injury. I mean, he might get up more, but he was stretched off. So I'm thinking he's going to be out for a while. So a bit unknown there.
Yeah, I think Mosquera would have been maybe feel a bit safer than Vandenberg in
Yeah.
terms of minutes. So that's unfortunate. I think it was actually Morgan Rogers that did the damage on
Yeah.
Mosquera. But yeah, again, looking back to the fixture ticker, Everton are at the top, but the annoying thing is a lot of them started at 5 million. So I think Branthwaite and Tarkowski have dropped to 4.8, but I don't really want to be spending 4.8.
No.
I want to be spending 4.4 or 4.5. Mikolenko's dropped to 4.3, but he's been injured and stuff. So probably not going to go there, despite the being top of the ticker. Pickford's a bit more expensive than the cheaper guys as well. So, and again, Everton haven't been great defensively anyway. So, despite being top of the ticker, it's probably their attackers I'm more interested in for a change than defensively. But yeah, food for thought there. And again, I just like the idea of getting into this busier spell with European games for lots of teams. Christmas will come around quickly. Your Andersons, your Milenkovic, your centre backs, Pinnocks. These guys are all very attractive now.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a lot of options there, but as we know with the first game week, I went for Barco, and then he gets loaned out to Seville. I got Quansah, he's going to start, and in fact he got 45 minutes, and Slot took one look at him, and pretty much said, you're not playing again.
4.1 million now?
So yeah, I sold him for 4.2. I consider that a victory. I sold him for Robertson. So I got some return from that space in my team. But yeah, this is the bit that can go wrong, and it's the bit you don't want to change. So Barco, and it's taken 5 game weeks for Quansah to finally go for me. They're not the changes you want to make. You just want to get that really nailed, and so that's why Leif Davis does appeal to me. We looked at the talisman last week, didn't we? Ipswich were like the worst for attack, but their best attacker was in fact Leif Davis, which says to me he's just going to play all the time, could get you attacking returns.
Yeah. Something else before we move away from defenders. I always just try and simplify it, take a step back and look at the team. Do I have as many, good players from good teams as possible? So triple Arsenal's ticked off, but there's only one Man City player. And I look at Pedro Porro, 5.5. Could it be I might find it hard to stretch to Gvardiol, and it's questionable whether Gvardiol's as good an asset as he was last season anyway. So, a Ruben Dias or an Akanji, or is it still worth a gamble on a Rico Lewis, for example? I know there was a 45-minute appearance recently, but I think there still could be a lot of occasions where he either plays or he doesn't play at all.
Yeah.
And it's not something I would usually do, and I probably won't do it. But certainly the 5-5 City defenders are of interest to me as a kind of a set and forget long term. If you could get a Trent Gabriel City defender, then you don't really need to go down the rotation route either. So you could even get a Van den Berg and another 4 million. It might be a little bit light. That's where Mosquera would have been handy. Where you could go Mosquera and Van den Berg. But probably makes sense still just to have 1-4-5 option, even if it is on the bench.
Yeah, definitely. And I think there are options as well. And it's just worth noting, those players like, for example, Anderson at Fulham, 4.4. Brighton defender, I don't. Pinnock and Dunk, something like that. But I might need to free up a bit of money in my particular one, which I'll talk about in a video later in the week, just so I can afford some of the just that 0.1 here and there. Okay, let's move on to midfield then. Some of these, I would imagine, there's probably little discussion. They're just nailed in your team. But there is a couple of places probably up for grabs, possibly. And I think, and Palmer is going to be popular, but also I've looked at that and thought, I'm not sure about 10.6. But let's start with Rodgers, 5.1. He's nailed. He's now getting returns. That's going to continue. 5.1.
Easy peasy.
Easy peasy. Just, it's brilliant. I love that price. Is so good for a wild card. Especially he's playing.
He's just such a good player. He is absolutely fantastic. And I got away with not owning him until game week 5. Yeah. And then he really hurt because I went mint day instead. So I lost, 9, maybe even more points on that one over the 2 weeks. So it was always the plan, mint day short term, Rodgers long term. I should have just went Rodgers long term from the start in hindsight. But easy pick, yeah. Excellent price, good team, fantastic player, getting 90 minutes. I just really like what I'm seeing from him. Like, the composure to find Watkins with the pass. He's just a classy player. Yeah. And I want to own him and I want to play him often as well. So something I could look at later in the week is there's obviously 8 strong attackers here. I could drop to 7 strong attackers if I'm willing to rely on Rodgers. And then that allows me maybe to find the route to Trent, for example, or a Man City defender. So Rodgers is absolutely nailed. And I would say Mbeumo and Saka are absolutely nailed as well. So it's the other 2 spots that are up for grabs.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, when I'm same thing. Rodgers and Bomo, Saka, they're on my wild card for those reasons. It's also really handy these are players, in our thoughts prior to game week 5 and like wild card in game week 6, and they all delivered. So that means their prices are going to go up. And the players that we're getting rid of didn't deliver, so their prices have gone down. So I think I've already avoided a 0.4 drop, and I've got something like a 0.5 increase. And these are players that are going to stay, I think, on my wild card. So already that's getting on for like a million swing. Half a million one way, half a million the other. Brian Mbeumo, Rodgers, Saka. I don't even think there's much debate. It's just the fixtures are so good for Brentford. And Rodgers such good value and delivering. Saka is captain material in good week. He's delivered every week, so he's now reliable. I prefer him to Salah at the moment, just because it's 2.5. That's a big saving, and that's what. So if there's a straight shootout between the two, Salah's probably got the edge, but in terms of your team in FPL, 2.5. Well, that's an Trent Alexander-Arnold.
Yeah, that 2.5 is 5 upgrades really. You've got 5 0.5s in there. So again, I look at Salah like you look at Palmer. I look at the price tag on Salah and I'm thinking I'm not so sure about that. There's so much I can do without him. I'm going to stay loyal to Haaland. I just think why not? He's scoring every week. He's injury free. He's such a reliable captain. I feel so much more comfortable captaining Haaland than I do Salah at this stage of Salah's career. and the teams. I back City more than I do Liverpool. So Haaland's not going anywhere for me. I don't think I'll even bother making a Haalandless draft because this week maybe not so good on paper away to Newcastle, but there's a lot of good Haaland captain weeks coming up. So just get him in place for those. But back to the midfield. Then you've got Palmer. I just eye test wise, maybe he hasn't looked as threatening as he maybe did last season. But again, it's similar to Rodgers for me. Own as many players as you can that you just love watching and are just fantastic players and can create something out of nothing. Great finish from Palmer at the weekend. Couple of good fixtures coming up, and again, the price point I like as well because it can be a short-term move or it could be a long-term move. If he comes in and does well, great, you keep him, and if he doesn't, you can drop down. Or if it becomes a point where Salah becomes a must-have again, you're not a million miles away from him in a double transfer. The more interesting position is probably the Semenyo one.
Yes. Okay.
Semenyo's been excellent, but I think Smith Rowe's been really good as well. So I'm kind of weighing up those two. That's probably one of my 50-50s.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, very similar thoughts there. I've pulled the plaster on Smith Rowe. I got my price rise out of him. He rose again last night, but that didn't affect me. Same with Salah. I got a price rise out of him and sold him on. And Smith Rowe, it's just the fixtures with Fulham for me. So they got Nottingham Forest away, then Man City away. So I prefer them at home. They got Aston Villa at home. That's quite tough. Everton away. Okay, that's a good one for him. Brentford at home, maybe. Crystal Palace away. Wolves at home. See, they kind of look good on paper, but I look at those details and I just think they could be quite tough, some of those away games. And maybe Semenyo or McNeil could be better in terms of fixtures for them. So I've got a slide I put up. This is from the comparison tool area. It's to compare Semenyo with Smith Rowe. So some people who've got Smith Rowe want to keep him. Some people might just want to get him in because I've had him for 5 weeks and he's been absolutely legendary. So he was the one I was most tearful of saying goodbye to. Maybe I should have kept it. I don't know. But Semenyo, in terms of like overall stats, it's 51% to Semenyo, 49% to Smith Rowe. So not much in it. And the heat map for those listening on the podcast version shows that Semenyo is very, very much camped down that right hand side and getting into the box a lot, very attacking. And Smith Rowe on the other side. So he is very attacking and he's sort of near-ish the penalty box. Semenyo's a little bit nearer to the penalty box, but Smith Rowe is apparently there's some key metrics that he's got ahead of Semenyo in 6 of those, but Semenyo's ahead of Smith Rowe in 5 of those. So it's not much in it. I'll read out some more stats and then you can give your thoughts. Semenyo's expected goals 1.86 for Smith Rowe. It's 1.32. Expected goals, that was. Expected assists is 1.25 for Semenyo. It's 0.73 for Smith Rowe, and expected goal involvement in this is including penalties as well if they were on them, is 3.11. And it's 3.04. So very, very similar. 2.05. For Smith Rowe. So in terms of goal involvement, the upshot of that, Semenyo is better than Smith Rowe in terms of overall goal involvement, and Semenyo is better than Smith Rowe for both assist potential and goal potential. So overall as well. So on paper, Semenyo is better. He has 2 good fixtures coming up.
Yeah, and I think the numbers here back up my eye test for the first couple of weeks of the season that out of these 3, if again I always think if I never played FPL before and I was just watching games for the first time, Semenyo is the one that pops up in the best positions and gets the most shots and looks the most threatening. So I like Semenyo most out of these 3. I'm not overly keen on McNeil, but I probably need to give him more thought. It's probably some previous season bias there because, expected goal involvement of 3.04 is very, very close to Semenyo. But again, I'm always after goal scorers rather than assisters more so. I know McNeil can get goals as well, but I think Semenyo's more likely just playing, in a more advanced position. So what people could do here on these 3 as well, we talked earlier about rotating defenders. You could possibly look at does one of these guys rotate really well with Rodgers, for example? or you could get two of these guys and play the fixtures. So there's a couple of different routes here you can go, but I'm probably leaning towards just Semenyo from these three.
Yeah, so you mentioned McNeil there. So he's currently in my team, but I'm minded to do Semenyo, and I'll explain why in a sec. But McNeil, expected goals, yeah, 0.228. So in comparison, Semenyo's 1.86. McNeil is lagging behind there. But expected assists is 2.76, which is double Semenyo, and I can't even count that up. 3 to 4 times better than Smith Rowe. And in terms of expected goal involvement, it's actually 3.04, which is just below Semenyo. So McNeil is a great option. And as we said last week, he is the talisman for Everton. It's not Calvert-Lewin. And Everton's fixtures: Crystal Palace at home, Newcastle at home, Ipswich away, Fulham at home, Southampton away, West Ham away, Brentford at home. Not necessarily for their defence, but for their attack. There's a strong chance of goals there, and McNeil's the one most likely. So what I was thinking, because Semenyo's slightly more expensive and is probably going to go up in a day or so. I think he's 75% on FPL statistics to go up, whereas McNeil's probably going to go up tonight, which would make McNeil 5.5 and it would make Semenyo 5.7. So what I was thinking is to go Semenyo because he's more expensive, and also the next two fixtures for Bournemouth are Southampton at home and Leicester away. Great. But then they drop off a cliff. Arsenal, Aston Villa, Man City, nightmare. And then swapping to McNeil in game week 8 for Ipswich away. And more of that great run. So that's what I was thinking, really. I'm not penciling in as a must move. It's like, I'm quite happy to keep Semenyo, but that's a little move I was just thinking. Because at the moment, I can't think of many transfers I'm going to make.
Yeah, and I think that's a really sensible approach. You know, an experienced manager like yourself and myself, we look at these little things in terms of the price points, and we know it's so much easier to get from Semenyo to McNeil than go the other way. And it just matches up with the fixtures so that the prices are in our favour. The fixtures fall nicely now for Semenyo. His numbers are better at the moment anyway, so bring him in, hopefully get some points next 2 game weeks, and then at least you've got the option of McNeil if you're not making a double move and maybe going for a more expensive midfielder or something like that. So yeah, all the signs do point to Semenyo for. I mean, it's 2 promoted teams coming up. What more could you ask for?
And so overall, because I've discussed this a little bit on X and on Instagram as well with people, and overall, I do think McNeil is the better FPL option because the fixtures are so good, and he's hoovering up the goal involvement for Everton. So if you think they're going to score, whereas Semenyo is a player you need to sort of look at potentially removing or benching because the fixtures get so bad. I know, so I think. Yeah, it's just that price point as well. Semenyo to McNeil is easily done. McNeil to Semenyo, you can't do unless you've got money in the bank.
Yeah, and I think I do need to give McNeil more thought this week because we always talk about avenues to points, and certainly Dwight McNeil has more avenues than Semenyo and Smith Rowe with the set pieces. So he commands most of them at Everton, and we know how good his left foot is. So yeah, McNeil's definitely in the conversation as well.
Okay, so let's move to. I've got to put your team back up on the screen. The forward places. So Haaland, that's fairly obvious why he's there. Not just the fixtures are so good, but he's scoring every week. He can hat trick any week, especially against weaker teams at home. I don't even know what his price is now, but he's just going nowhere. I haven't even entertained the thought of going without him. But the other two in your front line are Wood and Calvert-Lewin. So, do you want to talk about them? Because I know there's a couple of other 50-50s you're thinking about.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I remember we did our pre-season videos, and the models were looking at these kind of front lines, a big premium and cheap 2.6 million mid forwards, and it probably was these two, or at least they were in the conversation. So it's interesting that we might end up doing something like this. So yeah, Haaland's a lock for me. No 2 ways about it. I'm not even going to make a draft without him. Just reliable captain in the coming game weeks. And elsewhere, then Chris Woods he just keeps doing it. He keeps starting. He keeps getting goals. He's taking penalties. He's just a good player, and I think it's his place to lose at the moment. So I think he's attractive. Calvert-Lewin as well, I think, has looked much more like the old Calvert-Lewin, and Everton are scoring a few goals as well. So I think both are really good value at the moment. But Do I want to go into the next few weeks with both of them? I'm not so sure. I would like to have Dominic Solanke, I think, in here. And I'm very open to Nico Jackson as well, the way he's
Okay.
playing. So
Yeah.
I think my ideal front three would be Haaland, Solanke, and then one of these cheaper guys. But the question is, where do you find the cash for that? Because it's probably 1.5 million I would need to find roughly. So it's not easy.
Yeah, but why? My thoughts on that are it goes back to the price points again. I like Chris Woods. I'll have to look into why he was given the penalty because Gibbs White sort of gave him the ball, and is that because Chris Wood used to play for Brighton? Well, Chris Wood's played for everyone, but he scores an obscene amount of goals against Brighton, and maybe he was going for a record of goals against Brighton. I don't know, but he was specifically given the ball there. There are other penalty takers at Nottingham Forest as well. I mean, I don't think Ward-Prowse was on the pitch at the time. He's good at them as well. So, yeah, it all adds to it as well. And he's got Fulham at home next, and Calvert-Lewin as well. But that's why I think McNeil is the talisman above Calvert-Lewin at the moment, whereas Chris Wood is the talisman for Nottingham Forest. That's undisputable. So, but price point wise, I like that price point because both these players are good. But I also like that Solanke price point because you've just mentioned Nico Jackson there, and then you got a 1.5 to get up to Watkins rather than a 3 million to get up to Watkins. So I like that sort of 7.5 ish price point. So Solanke, you're considering Jackson. So I've been to the comparison tool and I have their stats here, and this is a little bit more different, to Smith Rowe and Semenyo. So this shows that Solanke, because what I've done with this one, because they haven't played the same amount of matches, so I've done it per appearance. So that's why, because people might say, oh well, Solanke's hardly played, but that I've done it per appearance. So this is what making most of his minutes. He's on 58% compared to 42% for Jackson. But Jackson, some of the key stats he's a little bit better at. And the heat map shows exactly what you would imagine for both of these. The big red dots of heat in the penalty box where they should be. Whereas Jackson also is a little bit more provider in the sort of getting towards the penalty box, and he's been dropping back a bit as well. Whereas Solanke's pretty much kick off and then he just steams into the penalty box, which you pretty much want for a striker. Jackson's expected goals is 0.7 per match, and he has his expected assists actually for Jackson is 0. So he's 0.7 for his expected goal involvement. Solanke is 0.7, exactly the same for expected goals, but expected assists he's actually 0.1, so marginally more assist potential. So his expected goal involvement is 0.8 per match, so getting on for goal involvement per match a little bit better than Jackson's. Both good options really, and I'm going to go back to that point about Semenyo and McNeil. Jackson has 2 great home games, and then his fixtures turn a bit. Solanke's are quite good all the way through. Jackson costs more. Go for Jackson. Move down to Solanke. If you get Solanke, you can't get up to Jackson if you wanted to. So that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, it's I'm struggling to shake off the previous season Jackson bias as well. He hasn't always been a great FPL asset, but really, really impressed with him this season. In particular, his all-round play as well. Dropping short, linking the play, playing through balls for the likes of Maduekes and these kind of players. I know his expected assist numbers are not very good there, but on the eye test, there's definitely assist potential there for Jackson as well. I think he's really stepped up his game, and obviously Maresca is a big fan, but I think of Chelsea. I think of competition for Jackson. We know when Nkunku's knocking on the door all the time. Maresca has said he's got Jackson and Nkunku for the striker position. So there will be occasions, I'm sure, where Nkunku starts and Jackson doesn't. And I don't have as many concerns about Solanke at Tottenham. I feel like if he's fit, he plays 95% of games. So I think I'll end up just going on the long term set and forget approach if I go for this price point. That is among the forwards, and I would like to get there because, like you say, I would rather have a 7.5 and a 6 million setup than a 2 6 millions because it leaves you a little bit more inflexible. And Watkins is I presume he's not in your draft. He's not in my draft. I'm not seeing him in many drafts at all. And if I jump over to the fixtures, Aston Villa play Ipswich, Man United, Fulham, Bournemouth in the next four. Watkins arguably should be in our
Yeah.
wildcard drafts. And something I'll probably weigh up this week is Cole Palmer versus Watkins. Is it better to go Watkins, save a bit of money, and then I can do a lot of other things elsewhere? So I don't want to fall into the trap of ignoring Ollie Watkins because of his price.
Yeah, I mean, I think with Ollie Watkins, I've just sort of resigned to not going there at the moment, but I've got lots of price points where I can move to him within a couple of moves, or free up some money and then move to him if I wanted to. And if I did, I think it would just restrict me, because I think, for example, with me, Ollie Watkins would mean no Alexander-Arnold, for example. It would mean perhaps I might have to go for a 4.5 midfielder. And this wildcard needs to be sort of the basics of it needs to be set up for a while. And I do completely agree with you with Solanke versus Jackson. I think overall Solanke is better because of the 90 minutes and the way he played. There's no real competition for Solanke, whereas with Jackson there is. And Nkunku could start pretty much any game. He may not, but he could start any game instead of Jackson. And you won't know when it's going to happen. And then you've suddenly got maybe 20 minutes of Jackson at the end, and you've got to hope he gets a last-minute consolation.
Yeah, and I think you'll get a lot of 90s out of Solanke, which is very attractive. And again, I think back to that heat map you just showed. It's just a nice heat map, a striker right in the 6-yard box, and that's where Postecoglou strikers play. If Spurs create lots of chances, which they did in the most recent game, players like Madison really, starting to perform really well. Solanke's going to, fall into points, even if he doesn't have, overall good performances.
So with my system, I don't have Palmer, hence me thinking I'm going to go for Jackson for that Brighton and Nottingham Forest at home games. But if I had Palmer, I would definitely go for Solanke, because I don't like Jackson enough to double up on the. I don't like Chelsea enough to double up on their attack, but I'm willing to dip my toe in Chelsea. But yeah, okay. Other attackers, you've got Chris Wood and Calvert-Lewin. So one of them's going to go if you go for Solanke, or indeed Ollie Watkins or Jackson. So I've got a comparison to all of them as well. So Chris Wood and Calvert-Lewin. Calvert-Lewin, 58% compared to 42% for Chris Wood. But Chris Wood is up on 9 key metrics there. So I'll read them out quickly, and then we'll go through your thoughts about them once I find them. Okay, so Chris Wood, expected goals 2.3. So it does include a penalty, and 0.1 XA. This is overall. This isn't per match. They both played 5, so we can do that. Expected goal involvement is 2.46. Calvert-Lewin a little less. Expected goals 1.47. Expected assist, that's 0.43, so that's higher. Expected goal involvement 1.9, so a little bit below, but they're both good. But Chris Wood has the edge in terms of expected goal involvement over Calvert-Lewin. But yeah, both got good fixtures, both similar price. That's a tough decision. I'm glad I've made the decision for Chris Wood, partly because I've got that picture of me encased in wood I put up on X every now and again. So I've just made that decision. But yeah, for those like you who haven't, it's actually quite tough.
Yeah, because I like both of them a lot. But when it comes to it, I think 2 factors for me again. Fixtures, number 1, Everton have better fixtures. And it's a bit like Solanke versus Jackson, that Calvert-Lewin, I'm going to back him for more 90-minute appearances, whereas Chris Wood, we've already seen it, 70 minutes, a Wanyi or someone else can always happen. So I don't want to be in a scenario in a couple of weeks' time where I've got a Jackson or a Wood or both who end up getting reduced minutes and maybe even benchings, whereas Solanke, Calvert-Lewin feel like, the old term, the glue guys, you put them in. Even if they start blanking, there's a good fixture coming up afterwards in Calvert-Lewin's case, and you can just focus your transfers elsewhere. So I think most likely strike force I'll end up on is Haaland, Solanke, Calvert-Lewin.
Okay, yeah. I think for me, it'll be broadly similar, but Chris Wood, Jackson, then Jackson to Solanke. But I'm happy to keep Jackson. But yeah, Solanke is the one, I think, if you're just going to go for one and you're not going to plan to make any transfers, but it's just I'm just sort of playing the fixtures a little bit. But we know how that can go wrong this week.
And again, there's another good example of good FPL pricing. We're going only Haaland as the same forward.
Yeah.
And we're also, neither of us have Watkins, who's a really attractive wildcard pick.
Yeah.
So kudos again to FPL.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we're very similar managers. I mean, you can see with our ranks, there's not much between us in terms of points. But already, I've got 6 or 7 players completely different to you, and it probably will remain that way. I'm just going to put your wildcard team up on the screen again, just to remind people. And just after our chat, what are the main sort of changes or thoughts that you've got before we wrap up?
Yeah, so I'll say first of all what's looking very likely. David Raya, Gabriel, Saka. That's my starting point.
Yeah.
Then in goes Mbeumo and Rodgers. Haaland stays. And then it's a matter of filling the gaps around that. So if I can make it work, Solanke, I want Solanke in here. But that means freeing up cash, and maybe Palmer's the cash cow, the most obvious cash cow here, who goes. And I will explore Ollie Watkins' draft as well if Palmer goes. Semenyo, I think, will win the race for that position in midfield. And then it's have a look at some rotations among defenders, try and get Trent in, maybe a Manchester City defender. So it's going to be a busy week of tinkering. It's definitely not a straightforward wild card because there's a lot of good options. And something else I'll probably look at as well is this draft has 8 strong attackers. I will look at the 7 strong attacker approach with a 4-5 as well. But like you, when we've got Semenyos and Rodgers and Smith Rowes and cheap forwards, I think it makes sense to have a strong 8th attacker going into this point of the season.
Yeah, I mean, I think in my team, I've currently got Rodgers first on the bench, and already that feels like maybe I should be playing him, and so immediately that makes me think exactly what you were just saying there. Can I get a 4.5 like who is it? Is it Tyler
Dibbling? Sounds good.
I don't know. Once you start getting, they sound like sort of Camberwick Green characters names. Then it's probably you might be over tinkering a little bit. But nevertheless, he could be a good option there.
Yeah, it just feels good to have a really good first sub. A Rodgers instead of a 4-5 defender. It just feels good. You can get 10 pointers out of these guys, Smith Rowes and stuff like that.
How many people this week and last week have got points off the bench from Smith Rowe, from Rodgers, from a good defender?
Yeah,
Munoz,
exactly. Yeah, I have Munoz, but I would going forward. That was a lucky 6-pointer. I would rather that to be a Rodgers or a Smith Rowe.
Yeah, definitely. But it does pay to do that. And also the thing is, we've just had the first wildcard game week 1, and we're now coming up to game week 6. I feel I've survived the first 5 game weeks. I haven't played them. I've just survived them. And with the game week 6 wildcard, I can't. I've got no other wildcard in game week 11. I can't just suddenly think, I've survived these 5 games. This has got to last me until I use the wild card again in, I don't know, February, March, something like that. So
yeah, it's interesting you mentioned survival, because I feel the exact same way. I feel like first 5 weeks survival mode / learning mode, and now we hit the boosters, and we hopefully get a lot of green arrows over the next few weeks.
Definitely. Thanks a lot for joining me. It's been really enlightening, especially I'm on a wildcard as well. I imagine a lot of people watching and listening are. Even if you're not, it's good to know what you're sort of up against and what transfers you might need to make as well. So hopefully it should be handy for you there. I'll be talking about my wildcards. I think that's going to go out on Thursday. I'm going to be speaking to Tom Freeman tomorrow. I'm not sure if he's wildcarding or not, but he will have his video out as well. And all the usual Scoutcast, Burning Questions, all those other videos and podcasts, and team news by the end of the week as well. Thanks a lot for joining me, Mark. Good luck with the wildcard, and good luck with the game week. See you soon.
You too, Joe. Cheers.